Ask me anything about politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can get all your questions about politics answered, and nobody's going to judge you or roast you or debate you or anything of that nature. It is just going to be good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So go ahead and throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. There's no fighting here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. No such thing as a dumb question, also, so you don't have to worry about getting judged or roasted for your question. It's too simple. It's too rudimentary. No such thing. Everybody is welcome here. Every kind of question is welcome here. So throw them in the chat, and we will get to answering them. All right, everybody's welcome here. Republican, Democrat, everything in the middle, everything on the outskirts. This is not a fighty show. This is not a show for debating. Oh, thanks, Fletch. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that was really fun. That was my first time doing that podcast. So yeah, everybody else, questions in here. Penn was broke, says you are Parker. You know, Penn was broke. I gotta be honest. I'm getting kind of tired of you popping into my live streams and saying that every now and again. So you can say other things or you can stop coming forever. Welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. Everybody is welcome, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. It is just going to be good faith answers to all your good faith questions, regardless of if you are left wing or right wing. Elizabeth Gregerson says, how are Russia able to compromise an American election? So there's a bunch of different ways in which adversarial nations like Russia can have a hand in swinging our elections. I think the biggest one is probably manipulating our information environment. Like, we have a whole bunch of information, Elizabeth, about the bot accounts that were active during the 2016 election, for example, and they were very effective, and they have not stopped. Muzz King and Triska, thanks so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. There's more insidious stuff that they can do, Elizabeth, like calling into bomb threats to specific areas. What else? I had another example locked and loaded, but then I forgot what it was. So sorry about that. Oh, thank you, Paige. It's very sweet. Bert's, great to see you again. Stoner Punk says, who do you think should be the Democratic presidential candidate? I like Chris Murphy, but let's focus on 2026 before we get to 2028. Rissa says, are you left wing or right wing? I am left wing. Beachbug says, how high you think gas will get? Let's see. I mean, if we're going by what is it? Crude, wholesale crude, like, aren't they saying like $100 a barrel is like where we're getting into trouble? I mean, I don't think it's I don't think it's impossible for it to go even higher than that. That's definitely not my area of expertise, though. Magaverse, Muzz King and Triska, thanks so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Odinson, great to see you again, says they're suggesting it could reach $200 a barrel. I know that's what the Iranians are saying. And, maybe they're right, maybe they're not. I've got no idea. Average Joe says, if there's no such thing as a dumb question, does that mean it's just dumb people who ask them? No comment, Average Joe. JP says, do you know anything about the new housing bill? Yeah, apparently the Democrats and Republicans are fighting over the stipulation that private equity and large businesses are not allowed to buy single-family homes. My guess is that the Republican Party is the one that's been a stickler about it, though I don't know if it's the House. It's probably the House Republicans, if it's anybody. Yeah, there's probably some money in there for building new units. But I'm more specific than that. I don't know, unfortunately, JP. So sorry about that. Edward says, what do you think about the USSR, GDR? Do you think it has had some good achievements? I don't know what the GDR is. If you're talking about the Soviet Union, like back in the day, that's really not my area of expertise, unfortunately. Jordan and a goat says, where do you stand on the political compass? I am a progressive Democrat. Bilbo says, right or left? I am left. Chochi Road says, what's the Save America Act about and what's holding that bill up? So the Save America Act, it's important, Choche, that you recognize that the Republican Party is lying about what the Save America Act is. Like, they're going to tell you that the Save America Act is to protect election integrity and make sure that non-citizens aren't voting, but that is a lie. The Save America Act is actually a voter suppression bill because it is going to require people to get all sorts of jump through a whole bunch of additional and potentially really expensive hoops in order to be able to vote. So I don't know if you have a passport or not, but one thing that people are saying is that you might need to get a passport. If you're a woman who has changed their name because they got married and they took their husband's name, it's going to be very difficult for you to vote, and you're going to have to request a lot of additional documentation. And that stuff is not free, and it is not easy. It takes a lot of work. And so, yeah, this is a bill designed to get people who tend to vote for Democrats more, making it harder for them to vote. That is the long and short of it. Daniel says, why does NYC require ID to shovel snow but not to vote? I have no idea what you're referring to, Daniel. I don't even know if that's true. Choje says, so basically you just got to present a photo ID? No, you got to present a photo ID and a birth certificate or a passport, and your name has to be identical on every single document. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to vote. So again, that means that a lot of women are not going to be able to vote because they changed their names when they got married. Houdini says, it's not even really true, and getting a copy of birth certificate is $8. LMAO. Houdini, I know what it looks like when people are trolling with misinformation, so you're out of here. Jellybean says, men don't care. I'm men. I care. Coco says, ID for everything else but vote, but not voting. LOL. That's not true. The number of things that you don't need an ID for is multitudinous. Guy G says, if I know nothing about politics, have bankrupt tons of businesses, I'm a pedophile. Can I run for president? Apparently. Coco says, that's simply not true. Go get your paperwork. Coco, what are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Choche says, sounds reasonable. Personally, I'd be telling the ladies, stay on top of your stuff. That seems a little rude to me, Choche. But here's the thing. We have really terrible voter participation in this country. So why would we want to make it harder? You know? Stick Bomb says Stein. That's anti-Semitic. So we're just going to go ahead and Coco says libs just want to cheat. That is also a lie. So you are out of here as well, Coco. Congratulations. Val Hank Rook says Jewish. I'm not Jewish. My dad was, though. So maybe we can tone down the anti-Semitism on my chat, guys. D, great to see you again. John Abbott, great to see you again. D says GDR is German Democratic Republic. I don't know anything about that. Okay, let's get back into these comments. Uncle Rick says, not making it harder at all. Stop with the lies. I do not truck with that nonsense. So you're out here also, Uncle Rick. Brando says, should I still vote for a Democrat even if they are pro-Israel? Yes, because having more Democrats in government empowers the Democrats who are standing up to Israel and AIPAC and Netanyahu. Also, if not voting for somebody being pro-Israel is like your thing, then not voting for that Democrat is going to make it easier for that Republican to get elected. And I guarantee that that Republican is more blindly pro-Israel than whatever Democrat you were thinking of voting for. JB says, so if Trump's trying to steal the midterm elections, why wouldn't vote ID be smart for everyone? Well, having voter ID is not going to stop the ways that Trump is trying to steal the midterm elections. It doesn't stop non-citizens from voting. It doesn't stop Trump from like stealing vote counting machines and stuff like that. Car Guy USA says, where do you think the Iran conflict will go? Nowhere good. Lumpy says, that's how we got Fetterman. That is not how we got Fetterman. Fetterman was a progressive Democrat, and then he something happened to his noodle or something. He had a stroke. Casual Water says, spends the whole time booting people. LMAO. If there were fewer bots, I wouldn't have to boot so many people. JB says, you're saying Trump was stealing voting machines, or what a lie. Come on now, stop. You're acting. I don't know what you're trying to say there, but also I did not say that Trump was stealing voting machines. I said that is one of the possible ways that he could try to steal the midterm elections. GJ says, opinion on abortion. I'm pro-choice, but even if you're not pro-choice, you should still vote for Democrats because Democratic policies actually decrease the number of abortions that happen. Republican policies don't stop abortions. They don't even decrease abortions. They just make pregnancy more dangerous for women. Seth says, Iran war opinions. The Iraq war and the Afghanistan war were better planned, and they were complete fucking catastrophes. So what does it tell you that easier wars planned better were catastrophes? What does that make you feel like this war with Iran is going to be? It's a stupid fucking waste of money. It is a waste of human lives. There are children who are orphans now. There are American veterans who are going to be disabled for their entire fucking lives. We're spending $1 billion a day while we're also kicking people off of fucking their food stamps. People can't afford health insurance. And we're canceling government grants for cancer research and shit like that. It is so fucking stupid. It is so fucking stupid. All right. Red says, save makes people jump through hoops. That is accurate. Nathan says, what's worse, what happened in Iran or I don't know where the other place is. Some dude says, do you think whatever they're calling this thing with Iran is go to bleed over into the next president? I think it definitely will. The severity of how it bleeds into the next presidency is anybody's guess. Lumpy says, Biden had power and didn't tax the rich. That is inaccurate. Biden did raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans. User a bunch of numbers said, yet Dems shut down the government. No, they didn't. Dupe says, calm down, Keemstar. Don't know what that means. Oscar says, opinion on ICE. ICE is a rogue agency that is acting illegally, denying people their due process rights. They murdered a bunch of people. They're sexually assaulting women. I can't say enough negative things about ICE. Tuka says, why did Trump defund DEI? Because people believe that DEI is bad. Uninformed people believe that DEI is bad. Racists don't like DEI because it elevates qualified people of color over non-qualified white people. Gigatron says, would you take APAC money? I wouldn't, but I don't think that it is I don't think it's a deal breaker for Democrats if they are running against Republicans who also take APAC money. All right. Tumba says, America just annexed my city of Quito with the FBI. I don't know anything about that, but I'm really sorry about that if that's true. D says, would you more likely support the SAVE Act if free expedited IDs would be made easily available upon request? Yeah, that's how you can tell the Republican Party is full of shit on the SAVE Act, because the Democrats are saying if you just make the IDs that people need free and easy to get, then we will sign on to this. And the Republican Party is like, no. Seth says, what about Gaza? I mean, Hamas is bad and the Netanyahu government is bad. T. Paskey says, opinions on Zach Polanski. I don't know who that is. Smite says, are you running for any political position? No. Walter says, my ID wasn't free. Neither was mine, Walter. Neither was my passport. Okay, Average Joe says, have you watched The Great Hack on Netflix? It's about how foreign actors influenced the 2016 election. When we hear election interference, we think about fraudulent votes. This isn't the case. The Great Hack shows how our data was used to target potential voters, specifically those on Facebook that appeared to be right-leaning centrists. They did not hack our voting machines. They hacked our brains. That is accurate, Average Joe. John Abbott says the NYC snow shoveling stuff is about Mamdani hiring citizens to shovel snow. Just like every job, ID is required to fill out tax filing paperwork. Seems about right to me. Alrighty. JP says the FBI opens permanent office in Ecuador as U.S. boosts security ties. Yeah, I have been reading more about their actions in Ecuador, and that is a fucking... yeah, it's a fucking travesty, man. The number of things that are going poorly in the Trump administration, it's so difficult to keep track of them and all the negative knock-on effects that of their shitty policies and stuff. Chris says, opinions on Thomas Massie. He's one of the better Republicans, but every Republican is still a Republican, meaning that they believe that the key to solving all the world's problems is to cut taxes for billionaires and cut regulations for their businesses. And that is just it's a stupid position. We know that it doesn't work. It hurts people. It only helps the rich. So, like, what are we doing here, guys? Ooh, excuse me. Mikael says, do you live in a Democratic state, city, or place? Yes, I do. But I've also lived in non-democratic states and cities. Some dude says, what do you think should be broken up first, the banks or Silicon Valley? Probably Silicon Valley. Chris says, Nick Fuentes told his fans to vote Democrat in the midterm. Thoughts? I love it when the Republican Party fights amongst themselves. I hope that the Nick Fuentes team wins and that a whole bunch of Democrats win in the midterms so that we can potentially stop some of the awful shit that is going on. Oh, thank you, the person who said I have nice eyes. I can't read your screen name. Tuka says, do you think Biden passed in 2019? No, I do not. Famously, he was president from 2020 to 2024, and they do not let dead people do that. All right, excellent questions so far. Average Joe says, agree or disagree, brain damage causes right-wing ideology. Fetterman, UFC fighters, NFL players, boomers with lead exposure. I mean, there are similarities to the effective brain damage and right conservative ethoses. There is a stigma around brain damage. Like, we're kind of insinuating that people are dumber, but there are correlations, and I'm not trying to say that anything negative about other voters. But I do think that we need to recognize that there are certain demographics that tend to vote for Republicans. And what does it mean when those demographics vote for Republicans? What does it mean that people who have not graduated from college or have not graduated from high school vote for Republicans in way higher percentages than people that have an education? Mikael says, what's your opinion on Charlie Kirk? I condemn in the strongest possible language any kind of violence, be it political or not. And so it was obviously the wrong thing to assassinate Charlie Kirk, the same way it's the wrong thing to assassinate anybody. But Charlie Kirk was not a good guy. Charlie Kirk was a liar and a con artist. He was poisoning the brains of our college students with right-wing ideology that is based on lies. He was not a good debater. He was a liar. He would make shit up all the time. And then people believe those lies. And part of the reason why we're in the terrible situation that we're in right now is because of people like Charlie Kirk lying to people and selling it as the truth. Oh, John Abbott says, when Real ID started, it took 20 years to get to 60% adoption in the states that had it. So yeah, it's not a small thing to try to get people on board with different ID requirements. Duka says, thoughts about Erica Kirk being Mossad? I haven't heard anything about that. I think it's really weird that she doesn't really seem to give a shit about her husband getting murdered. Two Button says, is AIPAC running our Senate? No, but money has a huge influence over our politics. And AIPAC is just one of many extremely well-funding lobbying organizations that exerts influence over our politicians. Finn Casey says, are you also commenting on New Zealand politics? I know absolutely nothing about New Zealand politics. Two Button says, sure does, and they own them. I mean, there are some senators who are not owned by AIPAC, other senators who are owned by AIPAC, other senators who are influenced a little bit by AIPAC. Devil's in the details here. Tumba says, if America thinks they can annex our city of Quito, maybe Ecuadorians like myself should annex Las Vegas. That I'm not going to advocate for that, Ecuadorian, but yeah. I was reading the first part of your name. I didn't realize that was you. I thought you were a new person named Tumba. All right, Smite says, do you think Yahoo will be arrested soon? Who's Yahoo? Scott Clower says, thoughts on Erica Kirk appointed to Air Force Academy Board? Does not seem like a position that she is qualified for. Shay May Katie says, politicals should not be owned. I completely agree with that. Part of the reason why I want to tax the rich and tax billionaires out of existence is because it is dangerous when you let people have that much money, the same way that it's dangerous when you let people have nuclear warheads. So if there are 1,000 people just in America who have so much money that they could pay somebody to do crimes for them, that's concerning. That's a real concern. Magic Chaos Max says, I have a question. All right, go ahead and ask it. Mikael says, do you like Ilhan Omar? I do. I have heard people accuse her of anti-Semitism. I've never seen it. I'm open to arguments. The arguments that I've heard, I have found unconvincing. Smite says, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu will be arrested soon? Not if he stays in power, and definitely not if he stays in Israel. Some dude says, do you think if J.D. Vance wasn't the VP, he would have been fired from the Trump administration a while ago? I don't know. J.D. Vance is doing the work of kissing Trump's ass 24/7. Yeah, I don't really see a necessity to fire him, MAGA Verse says, can't come up with a good defense of Quito attacking Vegas. I just don't condone any kind of violence, Mickey J says, what about Les Wexner and Epstein? I don't know too much about either of those guys. As far as I can tell, they were both doing PDF activity. So I believe Epstein is no longer with us. But if Les Wexner is, let's fucking throw that dude in jail. Michael Conan says, "What do you think about Bernie Sanders? I like him." Two Buttons says they work for us, but they send 30 billion to Israel every day and then give our money to the Senate. So that's a little inaccurate. Two Buttons. There are I believe over half of the Democrats in the Senate are voting against sending more money and weapons to Israel. Okay, Magic Chaos says, "What exactly do you know of that's actually doing anything to put a stop to our villainous behavior? This is all too much. What exactly do you know of that's actually doing anything to put a stop to our villainous behavior?" I don't really know how to answer that question, Magic Chaos, because I'm not really sure what you're referring to. Like, are you saying how do we stop like what the Trump administration is doing, or is that what you're asking? I'm not really sure. Let's see here. Tuka says Lex funded Epstein. All right, yeah, straight to jail then. Shay May Katie says, keep in the word American culture. What would that be? I mean, American culture would just be whatever the culture of various parts of America are. And obviously the culture in Los Angeles is different than the culture in Tulsa, which is different than the culture in Indianapolis. But there are, certain zeitgeists and, cultural through lines throughout America. Like part of American culture for a little while was discussing the Bad Bunny show, the halftime show. Part of American culture is discussing, the war in Iran. Shit like that. Okay, Mikael says, "Do you like Karen Bass? I don't know enough about her." Ray May says, "Why is homesteading banned?" I don't know what homesteading is. Gin Ganja says, "Okay, if you don't know, then why are you live? That's like a hugely important topic." What's a hugely important topic? I don't know everything, so I never claimed that I did. All right. Ecuadorian says, "Hey, game is game." That's pretty funny. Alrighty. Ginganj says American culture is white culture. Completely disagree with that. There are so many people in America who are not white. There are so many parts of American culture that are not based on white culture. Tacos, pizza. Um, that shit's not white culture. Jazz music, rock and roll, rap. That's not white culture. Fashion, not exclusively white. American literature, not exclusively white. You know, So yeah, not down with that. That's for darn sure. Dragon Bay says, "Why did Trump lie about the Tomahawk strike on the girls' school? Because he's a liar who lies about everything." Okay. Magic Chaos Max. Um, yeah. If you want to know how we can stop the Trump administration, there's a lot of things that people can do, but it just depends on what work you can do. So people are doing the work. People are protesting and boycotting and striking and stuff like that. People are putting pressure on their elected representatives and on business leaders and billionaires. People are organizing and recruiting people to be a part of this fight. And people are joining great organizations like Indivisible and Run for Something and Vote Save America and Swing Left to try to stop what the Trump administration is doing. But, there's a ton of work to do, and we always need more people to do that work. So hopefully you can be part of that. Ging says, "None of that matters. You're out of here." Hari says, "Are you called American if you're not native?" Yeah, people that are American citizens generally call themselves Americans. Shay May Katie says, "We signed up with them Democratic committee in my town." I'm so glad to hear that. Jay says, "Are you pro-Israel?" I am pro the citizens of Israel, but I am anti the government of Israel. Magicos Max says, "I don't trust this system to serve us the justice we deserve. They've stolen so much of our future." Magic, I completely understand that frustration and that lack of trust. The thing is, there are good people in government, there are good politicians. And so I just think we need to do the work of replacing the bad politicians with good politicians, or at the very least, better politicians. We know that works. Like, we have seen progress happen in America before. We can do it again. And I should also mention that the Republican Party and the billionaire class would love for you to not vote. They would love to you to be so pessimistic about the future and distrustful of government institutions that you just dip out entirely. They want you to think that resistance is futile. I refuse to give them that gift, in addition to not believing it. Sika Mitar says, "We nobody want to play with Kim. Don't know what that is." Spencer Waters says, "How can we come together to unalive every U.S. politician currently in office. I don't believe in violence, so I'm not going to endorse that at all. User says, this guy does not get laid. That is inaccurate. I did so with your mother last night. User says, would you rather have Diddy or Epstein as president? Neither. Lord of Eternity says, have you seen the newly added stat show in Washington, D.C.? Yeah, I know that that's, what do you call it? I know that that's Trump and Epstein together doing the Titanic pose. My guess, I didn't zoom in on the picture. I don't know. My guess is that Trump is the Kate Winslet and Epstein is the Leonardo DiCaprio in that situation, but I could be wrong. Just let me know. Marie says TikTok content creator said America has its own oil makers. Why is the oils in America still expensive? Well, oil is expensive. It's expensive to extract. It's expensive to refine. It's expensive to distribute among the states. I don't know if America produces enough oil for its various energy needs. We are an energy thirsty country from toe to tip. Oh, yeah. There you go, my guy. Robbie Van Antwerp Curl says, what do you think about people who don't vote because both sides are bad? I think it's one of the most irresponsible positions that a person can have. I don't blame people for believing that because there's a lot of money being spent to lie to people to convince them of that position. But I just need people to recognize that voting makes a huge difference, and there's a big difference between the political parties. That people are alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, and people are dead today because of shit the Trump administration has done, like cutting USAID or cutting cancer research or allowing ICE to murder people indiscriminately or, red state abortion bans that are now possible because of his Supreme Court justices. There are women who are dead because of that. S.E. Morgan says all sides are bad. One is significantly worse, though. I would disagree with that. I would go so far as to say that the Democratic Party is good. Not great, but good. Isaac says, bruh, Trump already win. Okay, but there's other elections, though. He did not get to be president for eternity. He does not get to entrench the Republican Party in power forever. Isaac says, what are you guys doing? We're talking about what Trump is doing and answering questions so that people can be more informed and engaged in politics. Right. Harris says, what does being rich actually mean to you? Money or freedom? That's a pretty ethereal kind of question there, Hariz. I guess if it just depends on the context, I would say. The Hewitt says, name 3 things you like about Trump. No. Isaac says, Democrats need to clean house. What about Republicans? S.E. Morgan says, is it just me or does Trump seem like he's losing it? He seemed like he is losing it. He's been losing it for a long time. J.R. Beck says, okay, never mind. You just get info from media, which is dreadfully wrong. That is inaccurate. I do not just get my information from the mainstream media, and the media is not dreadfully wrong. Ryan May says, the Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976 and the Homestead Act of 1862. Don't know what that's in reference to. Matt GW says, did you see the pics of Trump and Melania from the e-files that dropped this week? I did not. Netnol says, do you think Israel caused 9/11? I do not. Sephiroth says, what is your opinion of Gladio? Don't know what that is. Isaac says, there's no leader in Democrats. That's the problem. You're not asking a question, Isaac, so you're out of here. Okay. Hari says, what do you think women can lead? Yes, I do think women can lead. Rem V says, frontotemporal dementia diminishes him. Trump? Yeah, probably. D says, oil, different textures, different process to refine, thick versus thin. That is accurate. Average Joe says, do you have days where you hear someone say American culture is white culture, and instead of being civil, you want to say, it's not, it never was, get the fuck over it, shave your neck beard, throw your fedora away, go outside and talk to people? Yeah, I do have those days, but not when I'm doing my live streams. Ryan May says, what's your opinion on land ownership rights? It's really not my area of expertise, Ryan May. I don't know what the larger arguments are for people being able to own land versus not being able to own land. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Netnol says, are you pro-Zionism or against? I guess it depends on what you mean. If you mean Zionism is Israel gets to take over the entire Middle East, then no, I am an anti-Zionist. But if Zionism is the people that are currently living in Israel get to stay there, then yes, I am a Zionist because I don't believe that we should kick people out of their homes. I don't believe that we should kick people in Israel out of their homes the same way that I don't think that Israelis should be able to kick people out of their homes in Palestine. Harris says, is racism really that big of an issue? I think so. Ryan May says, Bezos and the farmlands. Don't know what that's in reference to. J. May Katie says, women can lead because they measure situations from all sides. I agree with that. S.E. Morgan says, how come the U.S. only cares about human rights and countries with oil? Because the people that are currently in charge of our government are in bed with the fossil fuel industry. The fossil fuel industry wants to make a shit ton more money, and so they love stealing oil from oil-rich countries. All right, Netnell says, do you agree with the saying racism is white culture? No, I don't think so. I don't agree with that. Bill's Mafia says, Trump sucks. That's all. I agree with that. Chris Hahn over on YouTube says, why our politicians aren't getting arrested after this many Epstein files got released? Because the people who are in charge of the government right now are blocking legal accountability for people in the Epstein files. Full stop. The Republican Party is in charge of Congress and the White House and the judiciary. And they are covering up people that are currently alive and in power from legal accountability for their associations with Jeffrey Epstein. Full stop. If you don't like it, you should vote for Democrats, because that is not the Democratic policy. All right, Angel Lunatic says, because our whole freaking government is corrupt, and if we do not get them out of power, it will not end. That's a little hyperbolic, Angel. There are lots of good people in the government who are not corrupt. Sephiroth says, why do you listen to this guy? He knows nothing. Who are you talking to? You talking to me? I know lots of things. Triskafon says, what do you think the hack into the e-files a few years ago means? Potentially, there's information that's out there, but once we lose the sort of like chain of custody, we don't know if the people who hacked that information then altered that information. So we really can't trust that, unfortunately. Larry James says, it is not Democrat policy. Clintons are not accountable, full stop. I mean, if somebody could ever prove to me that the Clintons did anything wrong, then I would say throw them in jail. But so far, they've been the subject of like dozens of investigations, and nobody's really found anything. So I really don't know what you're referring to, Larry James. Martin JJ says, Biden never released the files. Why should we trust Democrats? Well, it wasn't Biden's job to release the files because he was the president and he was not in charge of Congress or in charge of the FBI. The person that was in charge of the FBI was a Republican named Christopher Wray. You can ask him why the files weren't released. And if you want to know why Democrats in Congress didn't get this information released, they tried. In 2019, 2020, and 2023, Ro Khanna and other Democrats were part of a movement to try to get this information released. And Republicans blocked it. So you can miss me with that nonsense. Larry James says, so you ignore Clinton's history of sexual misconduct and give him a pass? I absolutely 100% do not do that. It's just, has he been proven to have done anything illegal? You know, what he did to Monica Lewinsky, I think is completely invalidating. I definitely don't, I would never vote for him again because of shit like that. But, you know, what you just said was lies. So, you know. Okay, Stephen Peterson says, do you think anyone will actually be held accountable for the Epstein files, or is it a waste of time? People will be held accountable for the Epstein files if we do the work of making sure that they're accountable. But the people that are currently in charge are the Republican Party, and they are covering up for the Epstein files. They are engaged in a massive cover-up so that the people that are in those files do not see any kind of legal accountability. But if we replace every Democrat, every Republican that's currently in office with a Democrat, I guarantee you we'll see accountability. Saturnus says, do you support Donald Trump? No, I do not. Matt GW says, think it's wild. Same rep that wanted Clinton impeached for morals. Standing alone won't impeach Donald Trump. Completely agree with that. GSDM says, should all the pro-life people be obligated to adopt a kid? That seems like a pretty good policy to me. I like that. Netnol says, do you think Epstein is really dead? I do, but, you know, I'm open to the idea that he's not. MAGAverse says, they must first be held accountable at the ballot box. Completely agree with that. Jax W said, I said what happened between Clinton and Monica is no one's business. They were growing with adults. I think you probably meant to say they were grown adults. But Clinton was Monica's boss. And that's an extremely inappropriate and unethical and potentially illegal thing to do to what's the word I'm looking for? To exploit your power dynamic in order to extract sexual favors. Seems pretty shady to me. Dr. J says the Clintons have been investigated several times and the witnesses always seem to commit suicide. That is inaccurate, Dr. J. Stephen Peterson says, do you think Trump is serious about Cuba next, or is it all just talk? I think he's 100% serious about it. S.E. Morgan says the GOP worships wealth. That is accurate. Shay May Katie says all we need to do is get 2 or 3 of them and the floodgate would open. Completely agree with that. Jax W says, that's what I meant. Sorry for the spell check. No worries. Womp Womp says, thoughts on Chad Bianco? Don't know who that is. All right, over to YouTube and Twitch and everything. John Abbott says, at this point, there are three possibilities. One, the Clintons are innocent of crimes. Two, the entire GOP is complicit in covering up the Clintons' crimes. And three, the entire GOP is grossly incompetent. Those are the three possibilities. John Abbott. Ecuadorian says, I'm going to sail into Santa Barbara, California under the red and black Jolly Roger flags. I do not endorse you doing that, Ecuadorian. Womp Womp says he's running for governor of California. Chad Bianco? In that case, I don't like him. I like Katie Porter. Dev says, I genuinely do not want to support Democrats, but they are funded by AIPAC, stand by Israel, etc. Well, there are way more Democrats that are standing up to AIPAC and are standing up to Netanyahu than there are Republicans. So I would still support Democrats, if only to get the Republicans out of office who are continuing to send money and weapons to Israel. Dev, what do you think about that strategy? Dave says, far too much power in the Epstein files for any accountability. I do not believe in that kind of doomorous pessimism, Dave. The people who are in those files want you to feel that way. So I am not ever going to give them that gift. Matt GW says, Bernie Sanders doesn't take PAC money. That is accurate. I mean, he's famous enough where he's able to get away with that. Not every Democrat is. Dragons Bay says, when Netanyahu visits the White House, why does he place audio bugs in the limos and bathrooms? Because he wants more compromise against the people in government. Short says, thoughts on a Democrat advancing to runoff in Marjorie Taylor Greene's old districts? It's a great sign. That'll be a very tough race for a Democrat to win, but stranger things have happened. Nitnell says, why was there no supervision over the islands? I have no idea. Dev says, Democrats commit foreign affairs too, and numerous Democratic presidents have. Okay, Deb, but we're talking about in the future. We're talking about going forward. Right now, the Republican Party is currently voting to send more money and weapons to Israel. The Democrats are voting against sending money and weapons to Israel. What do you think about that? How about we support the Democratic Party for standing up to AIPAC and Netanyahu? What do you think about that? Yazan says, do you think the moon landing is real? Yes, I do. Alrighty. Ecuadorian. I did that one already. Alrighty. Dave says, I vote conservative, but they are doomed for the midterms. Why would you vote conservative? Dave. Dev says, I know Republicans are. I'm against them. All right. Well, we should punish the Republican Party for sending more money and weapons to Israel, for allowing Israel to dogwalk us into a war with Iran, for exploding peace in the Middle East, for escalating cost of living by voting for Democrats. Don't you think, Dev? Don't you think that would be a really smart thing to do? Maybe if we vote for Democrats, we could have some oversight on ICE and CPB so that people aren't getting murdered by them. Do you think that might be a good move, Dev? Let me know what you think about that. Mick says, apparently Trump wants peace now. He's never really given a shit about peace. He just wants a Nobel Peace Prize because Obama got one, and he is criminally jealous of Barack Obama. JP says, who here is homeschooled? Not me. S.E. Morgan says, Dear MAGA, why is everything more expensive after Trump's first year in office? Excellent question. Matt GW says, can see the flag with good enough telescope. Don't know what that means. Bubble Base says, politics are silly and y'all need to touch grass. Politics are the reason why some people are alive and some people are dead, Bubble Base. Tell the family of Renee Good and Alex Preddy that politics is silly. Tell them. I want to see you tell them. I want to see you tell the families of people who are being detained and murdered and abused by ICE and CPB that politics is silly. Tell me that. All right, Matt G says, can see the flag on the moon with good enough to... Oh, the flag on the moon, gotcha. Richard the Great Scout says, the abomination and Democratic Party coup continues. They are traitors. Those are not questions, so you are out of here. Jax said, Hasla says, I will vote for any Democrat if they are not funded by AIPAC and are against Israel. All right, Hazla, but what about this? But what if the Democrats that are not being funded by AIPAC lose their primary? And so your choices are a Democrat that is funded by AIPAC or a Republican that is funded by AIPAC. Who would you choose in that situation? Hazla, let me know. Bubble Base says, I will tell them to hit me up. That's not funny. You're out of here. Bradford Huntsman says, why won't someone take Trump out? Well, I don't condone any kind of violence, so I'm not going to advocate for that. Hasla says the Democrat. Fucking hell yeah, Hazla. You and I, fucking simpatico. S.E. Morgan says, did you hear about the death pool in an ICE camp? Yeah, the fucking ICE and CPB were betting on which detainees would kill themselves. That's fucking disgusting, man. Like, what the fuck? Our country is doing this. Our taxpayers is paying, our tax dollars are paying for this shit. I'm so fucking mad about this shit all the time, guys. Odinson says, what is AIPAC? AIPAC is a lobbying organization funded with American billionaire dollars that advocates for the nation of Israel. They are not a foreign lobby because they're funded with American dollars, but they do basically lobby on behalf of the current Israeli government. They're an extremely right-wing organization, and they are very effective at losing Democrats their elections. Ali, great to see you again. Says, can you talk more about that being situation? I don't know what you mean by that, Ali. Rephrase, please. Hazla says, I'm a Palestinian American and Republicans are worse. That's why I vote for Democrats, but they need to do better. I agree with that, but part of them doing better is us not allowing Republicans to take over when they are just in the middle of starting to fix things, you know? Odinson says that shouldn't be a thing. I completely agree with that, Odinson. But I also think we shouldn't have the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society and shit like that. The betting situation. I don't know too much more about it. I just know that they were betting on which of their detainees would commit suicide. There's probably more information out there about that, but I don't know about it, unfortunately. Alrighty, let's see here. All right. H. Love LaRue says, how do you know? How do I know what? Odinson says, I agree with you on that. Excellent, Odinson. Lori's Ambron says, have you heard anything about Netanyahu or his brother? I mean, I know a little bit. Was there some recent news? Scott Clowers says, U.S. attorney dropped FIFA bribery case at Trump behest after fake Troby. Oh, isn't that interesting? How about that? JC says, fixing what the Democrats did to the country is an overtime job. What do you think the Democrats did to the country, JC? Because I don't know what it is that you were referring to. Matt GW says, not just AIPAC anymore. They also have Cuffy, J Street, and ZOA. AIPAC's been exposed. I believe J Street is a progressive organization. I don't know what Sufi and ZOA are. Ooh, Obamacare and Bidenomics. Those are good programs, JC. Why do you think those are bad programs? Obamacare saved lives. Bidenomics brought strength in the middle class and strengthened unions. Jax W says, I know that Democrats, the trunk messed up. I don't know what that means, the trunk. S.E. Morgan says, the more I learn about the way we treat others in the U.S., it's hard to believe we are the good guys. Some might argue that that is not the case, S.E. Morgan. Jojo says, is a two major party a problem we will be stuck with? Not if we vote for Democrats, Jojo, because if we vote for Democrats, we can get ranked choice voting, and ranked choice voting can make it so that other parties are competitive. The Republican Party is trying to make ranked choice voting illegal. So, JC, you're in question jail. JC says Obamacare tripled in costs in 10 years. That is inaccurate, JC. Obamacare lowered healthcare costs generally for Americans. So I don't really believe that you are here in good faith. I don't really believe that you are here because you want to learn new information. I think you're just here to spread lies. JC, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, JC. User 75 says, who are you and what did I miss about Democrats? Sounded like a group working against Democrats. No, I was just probably reading somebody else's comments. My name is Jarrett. I know a lot about politics, so you can ask me any questions about it. Jax W says, it was supposed to say the devil fixed everything Trump messes up. I don't know what that's in reference to. Kevin McCarthy says, what did the Democrats do that was so good? They did a lot of things. Let's see here. First president to walk a picket line with the union, an NLRB that was siding with the union for the first time in generations. Lena Khan was breaking up monopolies, lowering healthcare costs, the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history, making it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against you for having pre-existing conditions. Just a little taste of things right there. JC says United Healthcare went up 600%. Congratulations. You have not proven me wrong. Right. Average Joe says, "Do you know why Lindsey Graham has the nickname Ladybug?" I don't, and I would not encourage anybody to look that up. H. Love LaRue says, "Oh my God, it was a thing. I just looked it up on AP. The guards actually bet on people's lives. That is 100% accurate." H. Love. Jojo says, "Do you think ranked choice voting is the best option?" I do. There are some things, there are some details in exactly how you tabulate those ranked choice votes that, could make a real big difference in how people vote and how effective it is at encouraging other parties to be in the process. But ranked choice voting in general is the way that we get out of this kind of like two-party monopoly. Sooner Navy says Obamacare jacked the insurance rates for everyone. Not on Obamacare. That is inaccurate. Sooner Navy. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. I don't care if you have different political opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Eugene N says, "Why does socialism always fail?" It doesn't always fail. Paved roads is socialism. Public schools are socialism. There's never been a socialist country, so nobody can say whether or not a socialist country would work. Matt GW says, "Do you keep up with the stock market?" A little bit, not professionally. Sooner Navy says, "You can say all the shit you want, show receipts." Send me a DM. If you send me a DM, I will show you all the proof you need. But I guarantee you're not gonna, because you don't give a shit. You just are here to spread misinformation. H Love says, "Do you think cruelty is a good policy?" No, I do not. H Love. Right. Chris says, "Do you believe that elites and Jews are planning this war?" I'm going to stop you right there, Chris. We do not lump all Jewish people together the same way that we do not lump all white people together, or all men together, or all women together. That's what we call prejudice or stereotyping. There has been a rampant rise in anti Semitism ever since Trump descended the golden escalator back in 2015. So let's pump the brakes on that shit, please. I beg you, you know? So, yeah, I'm going to give you an opportunity, Chris, to not be anti Semitic going forward. All right, scrolling down the bottom. Sooner Navy says socialism in all forms have failed. That is inaccurate, Sooner Navy. And that was it. You didn't ask a question, so you're out of here. Matt GW says, "True, they just have bad leadership, just like the US. It's not one people here or there." That is accurate. User says white supremacy. And then Carmine blocked them. Excellent. Well done. Eugene N says, "No socialist country. What about the USSR?" The USSR was a dictatorship. It was not a socialist country. Socialism and communism are antithetical to the idea of authoritarian governments. So if you have a privileged group of people and other people are suffering, that is not socialist. That is not communist, just by definition. Mark Duffy says there has never been a socialist country. That is 100% accurate. There's never been a socialist country. Right. Eliminates all foids says, "Good evening, Jared. Good evening to you." Okay. S.E. Morgan says, "Hey, economic system without guardrails will fail." I completely agree with that. Alrighty. Let's see here. Average Joe says, "If you don't know why Lindsey Graham has that nickname, why would you discourage people from looking it up? Seems fishy, lol. Don't discourage natural human curiosity." I thought you said don't look it up, Average Joe. He says, "I do look it up, lol." I thought you were saying don't look it up because it's gross or something. D Scott is saying don't look it up. All right, Uncle Hippie says, "I think people who had scam plans through the Affordable Care Act increased their rates because they were banned." I believe that is 100% accurate, Uncle Hippie. Right, user 75 says, "You rabid oops. Rapid rate of speech is concerning, one-sided, and not open to civil discussion." That is inaccurate, user 75. Would you like to ask a question? Would you like me to prove to you that we are open to civil discussion here on Ask Me Anything About Politics? H Love says, "I thought socialism communism was economic, whereas democracy authoritarianism are government." There's a little gray area there that I am going to get into in just a second. H Love, let me catch up on these comments. Sorry. Martin Marcus says, "Tell me one successful communist country." There's never been a communist country, so I can't tell you if there's ever been a successful communist country. Eugene says, "How can a socialist country not be a dictatorship? You need to force people into being robbed." I mean, you're kind of showing your bias against the idea of socialism, Eugene, don't you think? S.E. Morgan says, "I'm going to go see John Mulaney soon. Can't wait. Are you going to see him at the Hollywood Bowl?" User 75 says, "No, it's not inaccurate." Well, that's not a question. That's your last straw. All right, H Love. So there are the same way that Buddhism is both a philosophy and a religion. The words socialism and communism can mean economic systems or they can mean government systems. Additionally, there are a bunch of people who have different definitions of what both of those categories mean. I don't really get into semantic arguments with people. I'm not trying to say what the correct definition of socialism or communism is. What I generally try to go for is this: when people on the left talk about wanting more communism, more socialism, what they're talking about is more power for workers, more benefit from their productivity. Like right now, the benefits of the working class go almost exclusively to the top 1%, but the working class is doing all the work, so that doesn't seem fair. So maybe we can incentivize companies to be employee owned. Maybe we can have a law that says the lowest paid employees have to have a seat on the board of directors. Maybe we should have a law that says the CEO can't make more than 50 times more what the lowest paid employee can make. Maybe we can strengthen the unions. Maybe we can break up monopolies. Those are the kind of communist things that people on the left want. And Triska, Muzzking, Donald Hayes, and H. Love, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. That means it's time for finger hearts, which we love. Same thing with socialism. When we talk about wanting more socialism, we talk about wanting the government to use our tax dollars to help create things that we desperately need, like healthcare and housing and higher education. Yeah, that is what we mean by socialism, you know? And then other people will say, oh, you're socialist, so you want Venezuela, you want Russia, you want China. That's where squeezing and flexing the definition of these words gets weaponized into pushing people away from left-leaning policies and left-leaning politicians. All right, let me know if there are any questions that you have based on that little info dump that I just gave you. H love, if that was accurate, if that was what do you call it? If that was educational for you, let me know. Triska, Tink, Muzz, Mia, SE, and D Scott, thank you so much for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal of the day. All right, back into finger hearts. Here we go. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Flip Flop Cowboy says, careful, that much common sense is going to confuse a lot of these poor, simple conservatives. We do not call conservatives stupid or simple or dumb on this channel, Flip Flop Cowboy. So no tea, no shade. Just want to let you know how to behave going forward. All right. Eugene says socialism is when the ruling class rob from the productive class and redistribute wealth. So this is an example of exactly what I was talking about. H Love, this guy Eugene just heard me talk about what I want, the exact specific policies that I want, and he is saying no. What you want is when the ruling class robs from the productive class and redistribute the wealth. So, Eugene, you're in question jail. If you don't ask a question next, you're out of here. Be part of the conversation. Prove me wrong, Okay, let's see here. Dragon's Base says, will AI control the world as Musk and elites hope for? I don't know. I hope not. I think it'll probably do a lot more damage than it will do not damage, shall we say. All right. Airstyle, good to see you again. Wi-Fi Bum says, why are you gay? Ask your mom. Misty Lane says, why can't you support people like AOC? I do support people like AOC, Misty Lane. Okay. All right. Dima Building the Adventure says, put me in, I'll debate you. I don't do debates. Madam says, why Trump wants Canada, water, minerals, oil? Because he's dumb. He thinks that it'd be cool if America was bigger. He wants to take over and colonize weaker countries. He wants America to own the Western Hemisphere, both North and South. He has a mob boss mentality to geopolitics, where Russia gets all of Europe, China gets all of Asia and Africa, and America gets all of the Americas, North and South. It's stupid. It's a waste of resources. It's ruining our relationship with all of our allies. Yeah, it's stupid. Eugene says, what do you disagree with in my definition? All right, well, let's see here. What was your definition? Don't put it again. I'm looking it up. Socialism is when the ruling class robbed from the productive class. The ruling class is currently robbing from the productive class. That's what capitalism is. Redistributing the wealth is the only part that you put there that sounds okay to me, you know? Alrighty. Mike Oxmile says, wipe or let it crust. Wipe. Italiana, good to see you again. Eugene, I already did that one. Oh, thank you, Misty Lane. I appreciate that. Ecuadorian says, banning Donald Trump from Latin America makes Latin America great. Completely agree with that. Matt GW McManus says, do you agree with Republicans should make minimum wage of their state so they pass reps? Do you agree with that representatives should make the minimum wage of their state so they pass more for their people? Yeah, I think that some legislation making it so that politicians have to live the life of their worst constituent, not worst like the worst one, but like the most impoverished, the one with the hardest life. They have to mirror that in order to incentivize them to bring everybody up together. Real Benda says, what do you make of Spain and England changing their tune about access to military bases? I don't know what the latest is on that. I heard that Spain was refusing to work with America on this war in Iran, and obviously I support that. I would hope that all of the other, industrialized nations would follow suit therein. H Love says, do you feel like religion is controlling a weird amount of policies right now? It is, because our government is currently infiltrated by Christian nationalists and Christian extremists. Katana says, where do you vote and what do you want to vote for next year and why? I vote at my polling place or I do mail-in voting. I vote for Democrats. I vote for progressive policies. Does that answer your question? H Love, did you know about the people, the military people that were giving speeches to the troops saying that our war in Iran is part of bringing about the apocalypse so that all the good Christians can get raptured up to heaven? Did you hear about that, H Love? Let me know. Mike Oxmal, neither. Stop asking that question. Uncle Hippie says, isn't capitalism stealing the labor of the workers while socialism is balancing it, more or less? That is, generally speaking, what the attitude is. And I do not see a response. Hold on a second. Eugene says, there's no capitalism anywhere. It's a mixed economy. What is capitalism then, according to you? Capitalism is where the free market makes the decisions. So you don't need to have any regulations. You don't need to have, minimum wage or pollution laws or hiring laws or anything. The free market will take care of everything. And there 100% is capitalism here in America. Just because it's a mixed economy doesn't mean that America is not mostly capitalism, Eugene N. All right, Eugene N says that capitalism is a synonym of the free market, so capitalism is incompatible with a government. But we still have capitalism, Eugene. It's not incompatible. It exists within a structured and regulated government. Katana says, what makes you vote left wing? The platform of the Democratic Party, the governing history of the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party being a way to get the Republican Party out of power, which I believe is terrible because of their politicians and their platform and their government history. Flip Flop Cowboy says, how do you think the 1% has convinced the upper middle class that poor people are the problem? Through lots and lots of propaganda and misinformation. User 75 says, would to know more about your communication style and genre. Well, ask a question and I'll do what I can. MAGA Versiverse says, it is part of the framework of our government. I don't know what that means. Matt GW says, they also said Trump was anointed by God to see us through this war. That's some Christian extremism shit right there, everybody. Gula Blend says, why do most American politicians support Israel? Most American politicians do not. Let me rephrase that, Gula. There's a difference between supporting the people of Israel and blindly following the government of Israel. There are a lot of Republican politicians who are blindly following the government of Israel. There are a lot of Democratic politicians that are voting against blindly following the Israeli government. And there are a lot of different motivations for why somebody would blindly go along with Netanyahu and the Israeli government. So yeah, It's hard to. It's a really big question to try to answer. Tink, Triska, D Scott, Muzz King, and Italiana. Thank you so much for helping me reach my second finger heart goal of the day. Aconite says, "Is Trump the worst president in U.S. history or in the top three?" I honestly, I don't know who could possibly be worse than him. Like it's pretty stunning how terrible of a president he is. Like the incompetence, the corruption, the lies, the self-dealing. It's just like, yeah, like I just don't fucking get it. Love Life says, "What system is China?" China is, there's a word for it. It's called like an unfair democracy or something like that. It's essentially a dictatorship, you know. Alrighty. Robert Taylor says Andrew Jackson was pretty bad. Yeah, but I don't think he was nearly as bad as Donald Trump. Ooh, Odinson says, "You're very well versed in domestic policy and interested in geopolitics." I'm interested. I don't know if I have the brain space. There's like so much going on domestically in order for me to to pay attention to it, in order for me to retain that information. Eugene N says, "What are the three worst things that Trump has done?" Excellent question, Eugene. I don't know about ranking all the worst things that Trump has done. Like if I tell you him having a crypto coin means that he is able to accept bribes from anonymous people, and that through his crypto coin he has been selling pardons. Is that worse than him illegally murdering people off the coast of Venezuela? Is that worse than him letting Netanyahu dog walk him into this war in the Middle East? Like, I don't really know what's worse. I'll just name a bunch of things, I suppose. Like he has filled the government with a bunch of people who are wildly unqualified and unserious. He is putting people in charge of agencies that are working against the entire foundation of that agency. For example, like the FTC and the FDA are supposed to be doing things, and the people in charge of those agencies are not doing those things. Let's see here. The Doge business was pretty shitty. Also, that was a mass firing event of military veterans. And I don't know about you, but I support our veterans, and I don't want them to be kicked out onto the street, not being able to afford food and housing and healthcare and shit like that. He has canceled research into cancer medications. He has cut off funding to disease prevention efforts. He has tripled the budget of ICE and CPB, and they're using that money to roam the streets of America in masks, just beating people up, kidnapping them, sexually assaulting them, and at times murdering them. Let's see here. He sold a whole bunch of our most valuable artificial intelligence chips to the Saudis, who are then going to sell it to China so that they can fucking destroy us in the AI race. Let's see here. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing because he refused to continue the Obamacare subsidies. Gas prices are accelerating because of the stupid fucking war. Yeah, there's just a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch of stuff. H Love says USAID. Come on, man. Are you talking to me? Did I say the wrong thing? H Love. Harish says, "Do you think judicial activism is good?" No, not necessarily. It's like the job of the judge is to interpret the law. So if you are interpreting the law because you specifically want to assist in certain what do you call it? In certain policies, that's antithetical to your oath as a judge. H Love says, "No, it's just the worst thing that he's done." Yeah, I think an argument could be made. H Love that is there. He also incited a coup against our governments. That's pretty bad too, I think. Odinson says, "Would you prefer to see more bipartisan efforts or strictly left-leaning policies?" It's a difficult question, Odinson, because if we value bipartisanship just for the sake of bipartisanship, what you are saying is you don't care if the Republican Party is so dogmatic and immovable that in order to be bipartisan, the Democratic Party has to give up on all their principles. I think left leaning policy is better. Bipartisanship has been weaponized against the left. And so I think we need to start thinking about things not in terms of bipartisanship, but in terms of getting things done that actually help people. All right. Harish says, so do you think the Supreme Court is politicized now? Oh, without question, Harish, without question. It is a Republican Supreme Court. It is a right wing, billionaire owned Supreme Court. And they are ignoring legal precedents. They are ignoring their own rulings. They are making shit up as they go along. They are doing what they want to do and coming up with a justification after it. Like, it is psychotic. It is sci fucking cotic. Alrighty. Misty Lane says it's basically selling the idea that poor people didn't work hard enough when productivity is up 400% under Gen Z. That is accurate. Chris says, what's your call on Charlie Kirk's death is a cover-up to hide Epstein files bill? Finally, thanks to Thomas Massey, made them release, but now elites are covering Epstein files using war as headlines. So thank you for not including the Jews in that comment, Chris. Is your name Chris? It looks like Chnis. I'm not sure if it is Chris or Chinnis or whatever. Yeah, I don't think that the Charlie Kirk assassination was like a cover up. I think that there was a sick individual who decided to do a political assassination, which again I condemn in the strongest possible language. But yeah, the Republican Party and the Trump administration are currently involved in a massive cover up of the Epstein files, and we should all vote for Democrats so that we can get access to that information and we can start seeing accountability for the people in those files. Sean P says, who do you want to Trump to appoint to the SCOTUS? He'll probably get 1 or 2 picks before his term ends. I hope he appoints nobody. Missy Lane says, how can the Supreme Court's partisan if there is a test before they are hired? I think that's sarcasm, Missy Lane. Chris says, is Trump going to be able to change rules for midterms and future elections? It is very unlikely, Chris. It's not impossible. You know, you'll never lose money betting on Republican politicians doing the wrong thing. But I do think that it's very unlikely that he will be able to accomplish that, especially since the midterms are months away, as opposed to being, more than a year away. True Capitalism says, why not advocate for libertarian instead of Dems and Republicans? For a couple of reasons, True Capitalism. First being that everywhere that they have tried libertarianism, they have failed drastically and dramatically. A town got taken over by bears. Argentina needed us to bail them out $20 billion. And also, if you read the book Dark Money, take a shot, you will discover that the entire libertarian movement was created by the billionaire class because they didn't want to pay taxes or have to endure any safety regulations on their businesses. Libertarianism exists because the Koch brothers decided to use a gas pipeline that was way too old. And everybody was telling them this pipeline is too old, it's going to lead to a disaster. And they said, but it'll save us $5 million a year. So they used the pipe, gas exploded, a bunch of teenagers died, and then the Kochs were sent to trial to try to fight about how much they had to then fiscally compensate the family for them manslaughtering their children. And the Kochs did not like that. They were like, how dare you? We are billionaires. You do not tell us what to do and how much to pay people after we accidentally kill their children. So they started the libertarian movement so they wouldn't have to deal with shit like that in the future. True Capitalism says that's not libertarian. I don't know what your definition then is, True Capitalism. H-Love, I don't know if you're still here, but this is exactly the shit that I was talking about when I say semantic arguments are used by people to try to convince you to support things or not support things that they do not want you to support, etc. Adam's Garden, good to see you too. Flip Flop Cowboy says, home ownership and retirement seems so far out of reach for so many. How could this be remedied? The money and the resources are there, Flip Flop Cowboy. They are just being hoarded by the billionaire class. So all we need to do is tax the billionaires, and then we can use that money to lift people up out of poverty, and suddenly we will be able to live in a world where retirement and owning a home is possible once again. Bitnevo says California is under threat of drone strikes, but why would Elon Musk's brother do that? That's pretty funny. I think that's a bit, right, Bitnevo? Yeah, I think I know. I'm pretty sure that's a bit. True Capitalism. Libertarianism was created by the School of Salamanca and Austrian School of Economics. Okay, well then the Koch brothers took it and they plugged it into their agenda. True Capitalism says, "What the fuck are you saying? You read some propaganda book?" Dark Money is not propaganda. Dark Money is an extremely well-sourced nonfiction book. But I think it's really interesting that somebody named True Capitalism, who is hyping for libertarianism, is just automatically saying that any book that disparages the Koch brothers is propaganda. Italiana says, can we recover with other countries, etc.? Do you think they know it's just at the hands of a madman? I think they know. I think that we need to make some really serious changes in America before our allies will ever trust us again. True Capitalism says, well, it is social democracy that defends the interests of the oligarchy, corporatism. That is inaccurate, True Capitalism. That is wildly inaccurate. No, True Capitalism. That is a lie. What you just said is a lie. Okay. Matt GW says, they know, but we should take accountability too. We did allow him to be elected 2 times. Who the fuck is we, Matt G? I've been on this fucking shit forever, man. I've been doing nothing but trying to tell people, do not vote for that guy and his fucking party of psychopaths, you know? Overregulation is what allows for lobby and favoritism, LMAO. No, True Capitalism, that is a lie. What you are saying is lies, True Capitalism. You are lying to people. You can either stop lying or you can leave. Those are your 2 options. Matt GW, so I never voted for him, but majority of my state did, sadly. Yeah, I know, Matt G. I'm just, every time I hear the we, it reminds me of True Capitalism, LMAO, then define monopoly. Monopoly is when you let capitalism happen. True Capitalism, that is the goal of capitalism. We are looking at hypermonopolization because of a free market attitude towards letting companies become conglomerates. True Capitalism. Isn't it always by government? What free market? No, government breaks up monopolies. Government doesn't bring monopolies together. Like, that is not an accurate thing that you have just said, True Capitalism. Chris says, what are your thoughts on the future of Ukraine? I worry about them, but I don't know. I do not know more than that, unfortunately. All right, True Capitalism, congratulations. You've annoyed me to the point where you are out of here. Odinson says, would you agree, disagree that there's a difference between capitalism and corporatism? I think there's definitely a difference. I think that you get corporatism through capitalism. Yeah, Matt GW. Every time I hear somebody use the we, I think about, there was this article that was written after the Charlie Kirk assassination that was like, hold on a second. Ron Koroleski says, so anti-Semitic assholes like you, are you proud of a Jewish school being attacked today, scumbag? Are you talking to me, Ron Koroleski? I know you're not accusing me, Jarrett Berenstein, of being anti-Semitic. I know that is not a thing that you are actively doing, right? Right. Vincent from Miami says, dude, I'm a kid, stop cursing. No, I will curse as much as I like. Right. Let's see here. Jens of Funky says, do you check questions over on Substack too? I don't have a lot of people watching on Substack. Oh, I got 8 people watching on Substack. Oh, that's pretty cool. I don't see where the comments come up. So sorry, Jen of Funky. But yeah, I got the thing clicked on. I don't know how I'm missing those comments or anything like that. Misty Lane says, if billionaires really did leave, if we tax them, would it hurt America? Serious question. No, it would not. And the idea that it would hurt is billionaire propaganda. Chris says, Trump, things he says get more embarrassing, pathetic, and dangerous. Completely agree with that. H Love says, true capitalism is onto a thing. How do you feel about the merger with like Paramount and Warner? I'm against it. I am against hyper monopolization. It's bad for workers. It is bad for purchasers. It's just bad. And right now, the philosophy regarding monopolization in the Trump administration is, if you bribe me, I will let you do it. So yeah, thumbs down on that fucking shit. Triska says, is the podcast you did recently posted on your Substack? I don't believe so. I think it was only available for subscribers. live. I think it'll be available on Monday for everybody who's not a subscriber. All right. Sean P says, who do you want? I already did that one already. Scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Vincent says, you stupid bro. Congratulations, you're blocked. Alrighty. Let's see here. Misty Lane says, is libertarian just anarcho-capitalism? I have no fucking idea. Yeah, Jen, let me know if I'm missing comments over there. Jen says, how do we teach Democrats to stop feeling like they have to fall in love with the perfect presidential candidate and be open to growing with a great enough one? That is an excellent question. Jen's funky. So here's the thing. There is a lot of money. Oh, hold on a second, Jen. I got to get to this one real quick. HLIF says, Kay, time for you to answer my transgender questions. Are you chill? Yes, I am extremely chill. Cheeseburger says, are you a member of the National Bolshevik Party? No, I am not. I'm a progressive Democrat. So yeah, there is a lot of money being put into propaganda on both mainstream media and social media to convince people on the left that you should not vote for a politician or political party unless they mirror your beliefs exactly. There is a lot of money going into propagandizing people to believe that you should not vote if you do not have people that mirror you exactly, and that your politicians need to be perfect, have never made any mistake ever. Now, I do not believe that people like you and I have the power to flood social media with so many live streams and videos that we can counter all of the billionaire propaganda, convincing people of that fact. But I do think that if you and I recruit a whole bunch of people, and then they recruit a whole bunch of people, and then they recruit a whole bunch of people, and then they recruit a whole bunch of people, and we do this shit in person and we phone tree our way out of this narrative, then I believe we can win. Then I believe we can get people out of that toxic mindset. But we have to do the work, and we got to be vigilant about it. Like, I think those are the only ways that we can beat the billionaires of this game. Let me know, Jen. Let me know how you think about that. John Abbott says, I don't think it's Democrats who have that problem. I think that's a problem of the left. I don't even know if it's a problem of the left, John Abbott. It could be a completely manufactured astroturf narrative created by the billionaire class, and a lot of people fell for it, and so now people are actively out there caping that narrative. Righty. Katana says, has you ever voted right wing? No, I have not. Flip Flop Cowboy says, political candidates should be pressured into becoming the perfect candidate by their constituents. I like that, Flip Hop Cowboy, 100%. Dragon's Bay says, what it takes to reach out to the least of us is what it takes to enhance the rest of us. I think I agree with that. Righty. MAGA Versa says, I remember when libertarians wanted to solve highway funding with jetpacks. That can't be a real thing. All right, everybody, things are calming down a little bit, so let's get the fuck out of here. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we are all struggling financially, but if you have the money and you have the desire, the mechanisms are there. Adams Garden says, did you see Trump candidate to replace Thomas Massie? I have not. So yeah, you can send gifts on TikTok. You can send emotes and bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can become a subscriber on Twitch. And you can subscribe for free to my Twitch channel if you have Amazon Prime. Costs you $0, and it helps me out a ton. Special love and thanks to all of my regular contributors. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Special thanks to all my regular contributors: Muzz King, Pliff, Average Joe, It's the Rocketeer, the Two Seans, D, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. If there are any questions that you guys have when I'm not streaming, do not be shy about reaching out. I want to be a resource for you guys. So if there's any way that I can help you be more involved or more informed about politics, I want to do that work. I want you to use me and abuse me. I want you to use me until you use me up. DMs are open. You can hit me up there. You can email me through my website. You can hit me up via my Discord. Link is in the bio. You can message me on multiple platforms. I'm not going to think you're a crazy person if you do that, because messages do get lost in the shuffle sometimes. The Discord is great also because there's recommendations there for books and podcasts, and also there's a great community there. There's recommendations for nonprofits that you should be volunteering with and the work that you can be doing to make a difference out there, because we desperately, desperately need people to do this work. If we don't do the work, we get fucked. If we don't do the work, we are fucked. John Abbott says, any thoughts on Jake Paul launching a political career and on Trump endorsing him? I worry about celebrities because sometimes people just vote for them just because they're famous. And so I'm not going to completely discount Jake Paul's ability to get elected. I will just say that he is not a smart person and not a serious person, and I do not think that people should vote for him. Right. Hood Rich Music Media says, why do they let criminals remain in politics? Because they are working with other criminals who allow them to stay in politics. And if you don't like that, you should vote for Democrats, because Democrats are not down with that shit. Adam's Garden says, you should open a podcast studio and YouTube channel. A podcast studio? I don't know what I would do with a podcast studio, but I already do have a YouTube channel, you know? It's Jake Paul. Jake Paul is going to be the guy that's going to take over for Thomas Massey. Oh, all right, everybody. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. So I guess we're going to start wrapping things up, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the support, the likes, the shares, the gifts. Every little bit helps, guys. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. So do the work. Be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.